No doubt you have no trouble using your phone for entertainment purposes, such as playing games or checking your social media accounts. In fact, I have no doubt that you could perform both of those things simultaneously while seated in front of a screen for 2 hours or more without losing your train of thought. But what if you spent 25 minutes studying? Perhaps that's too challenging. Do you think you could use additional hour to work on your side gig? That's not exactly enticing. You know that studying, working out, creating a company, or something equally useful will benefit you more in the long term, yet you still choose to spend your time watching TV, playing video games, and scouring social media. Some may say it's plain to see why. One task doesn't take much time or energy, while the other is challenging and needs you to put in some effort. However, there are many who have no trouble finding the time to study, work out, or pursue other interests on a consistent basis. As a result, the issue arises as to why certain people have more drive to take on challenging tasks. Is there any way to simplify complex tasks? Dopamine, a chemical in the brain, holds the key to understanding this phenomenon. Many people associate the neurotransmitter dopamine with positive emotions. However, that is not exactly what it accomplishes. The chemical messenger dopamine is responsible for our desire. That yearning is what gets us out of bed in the morning. Let me expose you to several rat tests conducted by neuroscientists to illustrate the potency of dopamine. Electrodes were placed in the rat brains by the researchers. Researchers triggered the rat's brain's reward system whenever the rat pulled a lever. The rat's craving became so intense that they repeatedly pulled the lever for long periods of time. There were times when the rats wouldn't even eat or sleep. To the point of fatigue, they would simply keep pressing the lever. On the other hand, things went in the opposite direction. The researchers interdicted dopamine transmission in the brain's reward circuit. Thus, the rats became so sluggish that they didn't bother getting up to get a drink of water. As a result, they refused to eat. They didn't want to have children. Not even water was a want for them. One may argue the rats had no longer any will to survive. However, the rats continued to eat enthusiastically whenever food was presented to them in this manner. You could assume that we go in search of food and drink because we are hungry or thirsty. Simply put, they lack the drive to get up and do it themselves. However, dopamine also plays an important function. Those studies on rats may be extreme examples, however, comparable effects of dopamine may be seen in people in our daily lives. Actually, the amount of dopamine your brain anticipates receiving plays a major role in determining your priorities. A lack of dopamine from an endeavor makes it less appealing to pursue, but if doing something gives you a rush of dopamine, you will want to keep doing it. Therefore, what actions cause a surge of dopamine? Releasing occurs during any behavior for which a payoff is anticipated. However, the brain won't let go of the activity if you realize there are no immediate benefits to it. It's common for the brain to release the feel-good chemical dopamine just before indulging in a meal that you know would bring you comfort. More if it makes your condition even worse. Reason being, your brain doesn't give a damn whether the excessive release of dopamine is bad for you. Basically, it just wants more of it. A drug addict is a prototypical illustration of this. What he's doing is bad for him, and he knows it, but he just cares about one thing: getting more of that substance. Cocaine and heroin both produce abnormally high levels of dopamine, which increases the user's desire for the drug. Of course, it's important to remember that almost everything also gives off a little bit of dopamine. So does anything as simple as quenching your thirst with water. However, the greatest amount of dopamine is produced after receiving a reward unexpectedly. Slot machine gambling is one such activity. You anticipate a larger payoff in the future even though you've been losing money up to that moment. There's no telling when it could occur. And in today's digital environment, we unknowingly saturate our brains with abnormally high levels of dopamine. Activities like surfing social networking sites, playing video games, seeing pornographic content online, etc., all have a high potential for producing dopamine. All of those actions are motivated by the hope of receiving a favorable outcome. For this reason, we can't help but check our phones every few minutes, and we anticipate getting it in the end. There should be some kind of alert, maybe a text: we're becoming like the rats in the maze, always pressing the lever for a fresh dose of dopamine. And you may be wondering, so what? Saying, "It's not like it's hurting me," is an exaggeration. But you would be mistaken. Homeostasis is a biological system that maintains equilibrium in our bodies. This indicates that we strive for a state of interior physical and chemical equilibrium. When we experience a change in our environment, our bodies adjust accordingly. Allow me to illustrate with a specific case. The cold causes a drop in our core body temperature. Because of this, we start shivering to warm ourselves up. However, when the weather is warm, our internal temperatures also rise. Our bodies react to the increased temperature by producing perspiration. In general, the human body strives to keep its internal temperature at about 37 degrees Celsius, 98 degrees Fahrenheit. However, homeostasis might also show up in another form. Tolerance is the key. Someone who doesn't consume alcohol very often, for instance, may feel the effects of it quite quickly. However, a habitual drinker's body will build up a tolerance to the effects of alcohol with time, requiring them to consume increasingly larger amounts. They are becoming less sensitive to the effects of alcohol, so it takes more and more to get them intoxicated. Dopamine isn't much different in this respect. Dopamine receptors are down-regulated as part of your body's effort to maintain homeostasis. A tolerance to the effects of dopamine results. When your brain continually receives large doses of dopamine, those doses eventually become the norm. This can be a serious issue since losing interest in activities that formerly sparked joy because they no longer do so is a direct result of decreased dopamine release. Even more so is getting oneself to actually execute things. Things that don't produce as much dopamine are less exciting and less enjoyable than those that do. That's why rather than studying or working on their company, most individuals would rather play video games or surf the web. Dopamine is released in large quantities when playing video games, contributing to a pleasant and relaxing experience. Unfortunately, activities like hard work and reading release less of it. Attempting to return to a normal life after drug abuse can be challenging for addicts for this very reason. Their capacity for dopamine overload exceeds what everyday life can provide. If dopamine isn't released enough, they'll become unmotivated like the rats in the tests. It's not only drug users, either. The same behavior happens to those who are hooked on video games, social media, or pornographic sites online. Once their tolerance for dopamine rises too high, individuals will no longer find pleasure in activities that produce modest levels of the chemical. This raises the question, can anything be done to stop this from happening? One solution is to undergo a detox of dopamine. Thank you for watching the mental hacks I use to enjoy challenging tasks part 1, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, please.